registration, documentation, certification, verification. We have to have all that sort of thing these days before you can get involved in anything. Before you engage in any organized type of activity, you've got to put your name on the dotted line. You have to show that you are committed, that you understand your responsibility, that you accept the conditions of your participation. You have to do all of that. If you're taking a new job, for instance, the very first day that you show up on the job site, you can be expected that there will be a number of forms to fill out. You'll have to sign a lot of documents and so forth. If you're buying a new car, why, it seems like you have to sign just a whole stack of papers before they'll let you pay them money to accept a car from them. If you're going to, for that matter, if you're going to enroll your child in Little League Baseball or something, there's always some kind of documentation that has to be done. What's the reason for all that anyway? Well, in all of those kind of things, we are entering into a relationship. And there are necessary conditions and responsibilities associated with that. This morning, and really throughout this entire week, we want to talk about the most important relationship that any of us might ever have, and that is our relationship as fellow Christians in the body of Christ and working together in a local congregation. There is joint participation, which is actually the literal meaning of the word fellowship. There's joint participation in the local church. Some people feel that that's unimportant and perhaps even unnecessary, really, to officially express your desire to affiliate with and work in a local congregation. Some take it as a doctrinal stance that they don't feel that that's necessary for them to be a member of a local church. Others, unfortunately, just neglect it and never follow through to identify themselves as a working member of a local congregation. We want to talk about that beginning today and really throughout the whole week. We're going to be talking about our relationship and our obligations as members of a local congregation. Make a list to try and help us of what our specific responsibilities and jobs are. I wonder if perhaps some of you husbands don't have a to-do list that is maintained by your wife. In other words, these are your responsibilities. We want to make sure you remember them. That's usually fairly helpful, especially if there are a lot of things that we need to be doing. It helps sometimes to write them down and make sure we are keeping track of what our responsibilities are. Well, we're talking about responsibilities this week, a whole series of lessons that we have planned to talk about our important responsibilities in the Lord's church. And so our planned theme for the whole work is to talk about the individual Christian and his responsibilities in the local church. It is important to know what they are, to keep track of these responsibilities, make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, each one of us individually in the body of Christ. This morning we spent some time sort of laying groundwork, discussing, for instance, that it is God's plan for us to be a member in a local church, and talking about what is involved in our relationship. Tonight we want to get a little more specific and talk about actual responsibilities, what we should be doing. And so I hope that we can say some things that will be helpful. Thanks for being here tonight. At home in Columbia, Tennessee, on Sunday night, I often say, I appreciate the Sunday night crowd. You know, there are some people who come, and we even refer to them as Sunday morning only Christians. I think there's a problem there with people not understanding their responsibilities, probably. But the people who come back on Sunday night who make special effort to be present when there's obviously lots of other things that you could be doing on a beautiful day like today in Vermont, we appreciate you very much for your presence. Thanks for being here. I'm going to be repeating all week long that if there's any question about anything I teach, I want you to ask, especially even if you are confused or even disagree with something that's been said. Please bring that to my attention so we can work that out. We don't want to leave any misunderstanding. We certainly don't want to teach anything that's in error. And so if you have any questions at all, please ask. As Kieran already mentioned, we're very interested in having Bible studies. Kieran's got several studies going already. We'd be glad to have our schedule this week completely filled up with studies, wouldn't we, Kieran? And so if you're interested in discussing things more thoroughly, or if you have questions that we're not addressing in our studies this week that you'd like to talk about, please say so. We'd be glad to study. That's what we're here for. That's what this is all about. Let's talk about our responsibilities in the local church. The question we want to deal with tonight are trying to figure out, what should I be doing? What should you be doing? What are the unique roles that we can fill? This morning in our lesson we talked about that we are members in a body. Not all members have the same capacity, not all members have the same job, but everyone has important work to do. And so how can you know what your unique responsibilities might be in this congregation? How can I know what I should be doing in the congregation I'm a member of back in Tennessee? How can we judge and understand what our particular responsibilities are? Well, I think we can actually, if you want to think about it in mathematical terms, we can sort of calculate our individual responsibilities. One of the factors that comes to play in determining what your responsibilities are involves your ability, what you're capable of doing. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 12, Paul said, "If there first be a willing mind, it is accepted according to that a man hath, and not according to that he hath not." Now I think there's an interesting principle there. It's a biblical principle. If we were to put that in our own words, we would say, God is not going to expect you to do more than you're able to do. You're not going to be held accountable. You're not going to be judged for doing something that you just simply didn't have the capability of doing. God wouldn't do that. God's a just and fair and loving and merciful God, and He's not going to judge you for failing to do something that you couldn't have done if you tried a million years. You could never have got it done. He's not like that. And so we understand different people have different ability levels. God understands that better than we do. And so we're not expected to do more than we are able. You remember the famous parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25. I want to that's a longer reading in Matthew chapter 25, but I just want to take some excerpts out of that well-known parable. Read with me here. "Then he that had received the 5 talents," remember this man assigned to his servants the oversight of his wealth, and he assigned to one man 5, and to another man 2, and another man 1 talent. You know the story. It says, "Then he that had received the 5 talents went and traded with the same, and made them another 5 talents. And likewise he that had received 2, he also gained other 2. But he that had received 1 went and digged in the earth, and hid his Lord's money. After a long time the Lord of those servants cometh, and reckoneth with them. And so he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents. So the 5 talent man had made 5 more. His Lord said to him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. He also that had received 2 talents came and said, Lo, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 2 talents. Behold, I have gained 2 other talents beside them. His Lord said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant." Now, if we were to stop right there, notice the 2 talent man, his master as the 5 talent man, and yet he received the same commendation, right? As we've studied this parable many times before, I think we've all concluded that the Lord assigned to these respective individuals what He thought they were capable of doing. The 5 talent man to oversee 5 talents, and he was commended because he'd gained 5 more. The 2 talent man, 2 talents, and he was gained 2 more. And the master was pleased with them. But you remember, then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast, that is thine. His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer weeping and gnashing of teeth. You just can't, as you read that parable, you just can't miss the point that the 1 talent man was not judged because he hadn't gained 5. He wasn't judged because he hadn't gained 2. His accountability was concerning that 1 talent that was entrusted to him. Remember, of course, we understand that the talent was a measure of monetary wealth. He was oversee this much of the master's wealth. He didn't do anything with it. He wasn't accountable for 5. He wasn't accountable for 2, but he was accountable for what he was able to do. And on that basis, he was condemned by the master. We need to learn that. The Lord's not going to assign to us more than we can do. He's not going to expect of us more than we're capable of. But whatever we are able to do, He expects us to use our abilities to our best in His service. So the first factor that we put into this equation to calculate our responsibility is ability. What is your ability? The other factor, and you probably knew where I was heading with this already, but the other factor in calculating responsibility is opportunity. I can only imagine that here in Vermont that a lot of folks like to ice skate. I used to like to do that myself. I've been living in Tennessee a long, long time, but when I was a boy, we lived in northern Indiana around Fort Wayne, and we ice skated all winter long on frozen ponds and played hockey, and I really loved that. What if you were an avid ice skater, but you lived out in the Arizona desert? Well, there wouldn't be much opportunity to use your ice skating ability in Arizona. Maybe you're a great skater, but there's no opportunity there to use that talent, right? Or what about a race car driver? Let's say that you are a quite skilled race car driver, but you are on an ocean liner. There's not much chance for a race car driver to use his skills if he's traveling by ocean liner. And so again, what we're saying is, although you may have certain abilities, those abilities have to be linked up with an opportunity to use the skill you have. That's understood. And I believe that's also true when it comes to our spiritual responsibilities before the Lord. In Proverbs chapter 3, verse 27, it says, "Withhold not good from them to whom it is due, when it is in the power of thine hand to do it." Now notice especially that last phrase. Do good when it's in your power to do it. The implication is sometimes you are not in a position to do it, but when it's in your power to do the good, do it. That's expected of you. Also, in Philippians chapter 4, verse 10, Paul says, "I rejoiced in the Lord greatly." He's writing back to the church at Philippi. "I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at the last your care of me hath flourished again, wherein you were also careful, but you lacked opportunity." So Paul talks about the church at Philippi, which was apparently one of the very good churches in the first century, and he mentioned that they had helped him before, but there had been a lag in that support and help that had been coming from them. The reason why? Because they didn't have an opportunity to get it to him. But now that opportunity had returned, and they had returned to having fellowship with Paul. The opportunity had presented itself again. And so I hope that you would agree with me that in determining what any particular individual should be doing, we can say these two factors come to play. What are you able to do? What's your ability? What is your opportunity to exercise those abilities? Put those two things together, ability plus opportunity, and we have then responsibility. If you're able and the opportunity presents itself to you, then you should act. Maybe if we were to think of an illustration of this, let's say that you are really down and out and you don't have enough food to feed yourself and your family. Let's say that I happen to have a little money and I know your need, so I have ability. I have some money that I could use to help you, and I know you and I know your need, and so ability, I have some money, is met with opportunity. You're needing some help, then I'm responsible to step forward and do that. Now, change the story a minute. Let's say that you're down and out and you have no money to feed your family. I'm going to tell you, I'm broke too. I hadn't got a dime in my pocket. Therefore, I have no ability to help you. And so I'm not responsible to help you. I don't have any ability to do so. See that? Or change the story again. Let's say that you're down and out and you have no money. I've got some money, but I'm way off someplace else. I'm not aware. I don't know you, and I'm not aware of your need. In other words, your situation, I've not become aware of it. I don't know about that opportunity. If I'm not confronted with that opportunity, even though I could help if I knew of it, since I don't know of it, the opportunity hasn't presented itself to me, I have no responsibility. The two things have to come together, ability and opportunity, and then I have a responsibility to act. All right, now, suggest to you for a few minutes is let's do some inventory taking. Let's take inventory. What are our abilities? And how would one know how would one know what his abilities are? I think that's a challenging question. I just want to quickly suggest some things that maybe every one of us could and should be doing to understand our abilities better. Now, you might be able to, this is a man-made list here, and you may be able to add to the list, but here's some things that I think are good suggestions. First of all, I would say pray. Pray about it to know what you're able to do. In James chapter 1 verse 5, James says, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men richly and upbraideth not, and it'll be given. So wisdom is something that God will supply. If you feel that you're lacking in understanding about what your abilities are, pray about it. That would certainly be appropriate. I would think that also a continuing, ongoing, increasing study of the Scriptures would definitely be helpful. That's always valuable. Someone has suggested we speak to God by prayer. He speaks to us through the Scriptures. So get that communication working through prayer and study of the Scriptures. But also, in addition to just reading and studying the Scriptures, spend some serious time in thought and meditation about what you are learning there. It's one thing to know the facts of the Scripture, to be a student who has applied himself to know the information, but through thought and meditation we consider how to apply the things that we learn from the Scriptures. And then I would definitely suggest that there are other members of the local congregation and maybe other Christians that you know in other places that you could ask. Maybe if you're really trying to come to grips with what could I possibly do, what are my abilities and skills that I can employ in serving the Lord, how could it be wrong to talk to some others and say, do you see something that maybe you think I'm able to do that I could step up to do? Ask others whose judgment you respect. Ask them for advice in this matter. Maybe some questions that you could ask yourself to help to come to grips with this idea of what are my abilities. For instance, ask yourself, what special blessings and advantages do I have that others do not have? Each of us are rather unique in the things that we have, and certain blessings. But maybe you have some particular skill in one type of thing that others don't have. And so ask yourself, what are the blessings and advantages that have been provided to me, and I can maybe others don't have the same blessings I have in certain areas. How am I unique in that regard? What do I possess that I could use in the Lord's service? Maybe I have a little extra time. Some of us are getting old enough that we can talk about retirement, So in retirement, obviously, a person has some additional time. Would that additional time be something that I could use? Maybe somebody has been blessed financially. That's a blessing that comes in varying measure to different people. Maybe do I have some money that I could use? What about my house, my car, my phone, my education, and so forth? What things do I possess that I can use in the Lord's service? What things do I derive special satisfaction and fulfillment from doing? If we are if there's something we especially like to do, and we can use that we enjoy doing in the Lord's service, then that'd be a great area to step forward. Maybe some of the ladies especially like to cook or bake, and there's someone who needs some food supplied to help them in a particular time of trouble. There's something you enjoy doing, and there's a place where that skill can be used. That would be a special ability to use. What kind of things do I enjoy doing? Some people have what we might refer to as the gift of gab. Other people are more quiet. They don't like to get out and talk. Some people like to engage in conversation with anybody and everybody. If you enjoy that, then what would be better than maybe getting with Kieran and when they set up the booth over in Burlington to reach out to people. If you have that gift of gab, if you enjoy talking, We'll give you a great chance to use that ability and get out there and talk to people. What kind of things do you enjoy doing? What kind of things come naturally to you? This goes to the fact that we're all different. And what you may do very easily may be much harder for me, and vice versa. What kind of things come naturally to you? And then, I think very important to the list, what kind of things can I learn to do? I wouldn't want to leave the impression that we are in a stagnant situation when it comes to ability. That I only have this fixed set of skills. That's who I am, that's where I am, and I'm never going to change. That'd be a mistake. I think any of us need to be trying to grow in our abilities. And so what kind of things could I learn to do that I'm not doing right now, and then apply yourself to learn those skills. But all of those kind of things go to answering the question, what are my abilities? How can I know what my abilities really are? Remember, that's the first factor when it comes to calculating our responsibility. You got to have ability. Well, let's do the same thing with opportunity. Let's ask some questions about how we can know what our opportunities might be. I'm going to suggest at the outset the very same things we did already. Pray about it, study the Scriptures about it, give serious thought and meditation to it, and ask others for advice. All of those same things would be appropriate when it comes to the idea of determining what opportunities are available. There are a lot of opportunities that I may not have thought of or be aware of. I need to be open to the kind of things that would wake me up to those kind of opportunities, especially this idea of asking for advice. Just since I've been here, Kieran has suggested something that I've got to learn more about. What do you call it, Kieran? Meetups on the internet. You can arrange to maybe meet at a public place with a group of people to have a Bible. I didn't know anything about that. I want to learn more about that before I go back to Tennessee, because I think that's something that could be employed. I mean, people are reaching out in that way. And so I'm going to ask Kieran more about that. That's an opportunity, you see, and we need to be looking for those kinds of opportunities. Some questions we could ask ourselves about opportunities. What things need to be done in the overall work of this church? I've only been here a day, and so I don't know that much about the work here at Milton yet. I hope to learn more about it as the week unfolds, but I want to tell you, my guess is that there are some things that need to be done, and help would be much appreciated. There are things that need to be done in the work of this local church. There are opportunities to serve. It would be, in any congregation I've ever known anything about, it'd be a huge mistake to think, well, all the bases are covered, man. There's nothing being left undone. Everything that could be done is being done, and therefore we are okay. No. In every congregation there are still things, more things that need to be done. What kind of things could I do that would help the spiritual well-being and growth of this congregation? That's what we're after, right? We want to see the church grow both numerically and spiritually. So what specific kind of things could I do that would help in that growth of the local congregation? What's currently not being done adequately, or maybe not being done at all? Have you ever had one of those moments where you said to yourself, or you heard someone else say, someone needs to... Well, that's right there where you need to fill in the blank. Which someone needs to... Well, wait a minute, I'm someone. If someone needs to do this or that, whatever it is in the work of the local congregation, if it needs to be, and if you ever think that or hear, someone needs to, there's an opportunity. If it needs to be done, I'm someone, I could likely do that. And so you need to ask, what is not being done enough or not being done at all? What problems exist? Churches have problems. We'd be foolish to ignore that reality. The fact of the matter is, when we go back and read in our New Testament, the churches in that New Testament era had their problems too, didn't they? That is the reason why churches have problems, is because churches are made up of people, and people have problems. They're going to bring their problems to the church. The church will have problems. But think about this. Someone suggested that a problem is an opportunity in work clothes. I thought that was a pretty good expression. If there's a problem, then there's an opportunity to do something good in addressing that problem. Ask yourself, what are other people doing that I can help to do? We really need to be perceptive of that. If other members of the local congregation are doing some things that I could get involved with them in doing, then I should. I shouldn't sit back and say, well, Kieran's doing this, or Al's doing that, Mike's doing that. Well, Mike, what are you doing that I could help you do? And so forth. What are others doing that I could get involved in helping them do? Now, when we think about our opportunities, we have to understand that there may be some restrictions placed on me by Scripture. There might be some things that I can't step up and do. For instance, just as a very obvious example of what I'm talking about here, we need somebody to preach a sermon next Sunday evening. Well, we're going to exclude the women from that because the Scriptures restrict them in that matter, right? So that wouldn't be an opportunity for the women. Now, it might be an opportunity for a lot of the men to step up and bring a lesson, but you have to be realistic to understand that there are sometimes restrictions that factor into your opportunities. What other opportunities might limit, what other factors that might limit my opportunities? Back at home, I've been sort of bragging about my grandchildren. I've got 11 grandkids. I have 4 children and now 11 grandkids, and they're a great blessing to us. Some of my daughter-in-laws, well, my daughter for that matter too, I've got 3 sons and a daughter, and they've all got young children at home. And the mothers are really busy. One of my daughter-in-laws has a newborn baby at home. Well, that newborn baby then takes a lot of attention, and for a time at least, that's going to factor into what kind of opportunity she has to do other things, right? And so that's understood, and you have to be realistic about that. And so, just some questions again. List and maybe come up with some additional questions that might help. What I am encouraging, though, is spend some time taking inventory. Ask yourself about abilities. Ask yourself about opportunities. As we've already said, those things coming together factor into what we ought to be doing. Now, with those things in mind, let us suggest just briefly what God expects from each one of us. And we're doing this to just sort of seal the deal or impress in our minds the importance of understanding what our responsibilities are, to encourage this sort of inventory taking that we've just been talking about. What does God expect? What does He expect from me? What does He expect from you? Well, one of the things that God expects from all of us is what the Scriptures would refer to as fruitfulness. He expects us to bear fruit. In Matthew chapter 7, this comes from the Sermon on the Mount. In Matthew 7, beginning verse 15, Jesus said, "Beware of false prophets which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not good fruit is hewn down and cast in the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them." Now, I don't know about you, but I have most text to talk about false teachers. To say, you'll be able to tell a false teacher by their fruits. By their fruits ye shall know them. If they're a false teacher and they're teaching things that are not true to the Word of God, that will become obvious. That it will bear an evil fruit. That's very appropriate use of this text. But there's something else there that we may have overlooked. Notice what Jesus said about those who do good. Every good bringeth forth good fruit. Well, if I'm a good tree, then it's understood that I ought to be producing good fruit in the Lord's service. And By your fruits you shall know them. Well, if you can know a false teacher by his fruits, you ought to be able to tell someone who's right with God by their fruits as well. Every good tree bringeth forth good fruit. We're supposed to be bringing forth fruit for the Lord. In John chapter 15 and verse 8, herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit. So shall ye be my disciples. Notice, you bear fruit. So shall ye be my disciples. The New American Standard says, so prove to be my disciples. In other words, you prove you're a disciple of the Lord by bearing fruit. Another version says, showing yourselves to be my disciples. By bearing fruit, you show yourself to be a disciple of the Lord. One commentator says, the only way in which you can bring glory to my Father is to bear much fruit and to show yourselves to be my disciples. And so it is expected by God that we will be bearing fruit for Him. We should stop from time to time and say, am I bearing fruit for God? Am I bringing glory to Him? You know, that's really the purpose for our existence. Our whole purpose for existence is to bring glory to the Father. If we're not doing that, then we're not doing our job. We need to bear fruit to His glory. Another word that we could put in there, God expects profitableness. Profitableness. Now, that may not be a word that we use very often, but notice how this is addressed in Scripture. Jesus said, cast ye the unprofitable servant into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Concentrate on that word, unprofitable. Cast ye the unprofitable servant in outer darkness. The New American Standard uses there the word worthless. Another English translation says useless. One literal translation uses the expression good for nothing. And so here's a good for nothing. What will happen? He'll be cast into outer darkness. I don't know about you. I think I do, but I know about myself. I wouldn't want to be identified as an unprofitable, worthless, useless, good for nothing servant, would you? We surely don't want those descriptives used of us. God expects us to be both fruitful and profitable in His service. And so the bottom line question is ultimately, will you do it? Will you take inventory of yourself? You have a inventory taking. Ask yourself what are the opportunities that avail themselves to you to understand what you're doing. With the full understanding, God expects us to be busy. In Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 4, it says, he that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. Now that's an analogy drawn from farming, obviously. But what the wise man there is suggesting, the person who tries to think about all contingencies, I better not go out today. It's pretty windy. It'd be a bad day to sow. I better not go out today. There's a lot of rain clouds. It might be a bad day to reap a harvest. And so he's constantly looking for reasons. Really, he's looking for excuses for why not to do something. I'm afraid we get ourselves in that vein too often. We're always looking for an excuse why not to do something. We ought to be looking for opportunities to do all that we can. Well, I hope our thoughts have been helpful tonight, and that we will all, I'm including myself, that we will all seriously think about what we can do and do more in the service of God. We need to understand our responsibilities and step up to fulfill them. I hope our thoughts have been helpful. As we bring the lesson to a close, we're going to sing this song of invitation that Kieran suggested earlier. Yes, Kieran? 620 in the big book. Okay, we're going to go to 620 in the big book for a song of invitation. When we sing these songs of invitation, what we're encouraging everyone to do is to think about your relationship with the Father in heaven, make sure it is right. And therefore, if you are not a Christian, and by that we mean you have not obeyed that simple New Testament plan of salvation, you need to do that. That plan of salvation is simple, it's not hard to understand. You've got to hear God's truth, and upon hearing that, you must believe it. Repent of your sins, confess your faith in Jesus, and be baptized for the remission of sins. If you've never done those things, we would encourage you to make that decision without delay. If you need more information, if you want to know more about that, if you just feel you don't know enough to make a good choice, just say a word and we'll study with you. But you need to get right with God through obeying that gospel plan of salvation. If you're a Christian already, but you feel that you have been neglecting your responsibilities in His service and you've not been faithful in doing His will, we beg you to come back in repentance, confession, and prayer. If we can help, let us know while we stand and sing this song.